we've tended to make Jesus into a really kind, light, fluffy, cuddly teddy bear. But Jesus is really interested in vanquishing the forces of evil. When oppression is so systemic and lasts for such a long time, the people who are being oppressed just accept it. But Jesus came and disrupted that. Hello, Todd Anderson here from the district office. Wanted to spend some time with you today thinking about adaptive leadership. Last Sunday, I preached at our Abundant Fruit Gathering. One of the things that I was talking about in the sermon was thinking seriously about how it is that we listen to voices of others. We don't really know each other as well as we think we know each other, and we have a tendency to talk past each other. In Malcolm Gladwell's book, Talking to Strangers, is this piece about adaptive thinking. He investigates how assumptions have been made that led to wrong conclusions and poor outcomes. But one of the pieces that he talked about was a study that was done by criminologists in the early 1970s in Kansas City, Missouri. These criminologists had created a form of policing in a very limited 2 or 3 block area of Kansas City. And they were able to reduce crime by 50% in a very short period of time. So they wrote up their results, they published them. And police forces all around the United States began to adopt these policies. What ended up happening is it failed everywhere. But because it was the policy of these police forces, they just figured if they would try harder and work harder, that it would be more successful. And it never was anywhere. So one of the little vignettes that are talked about in this story is Ferguson, Missouri. And out of that protest came a tagline that held the meaning of those protests: Black Lives Matter. Now, what's interesting is that there was an immediate response from dominant culture. Rather than dominant culture being able to listen to this lament, this cry that Black Lives Matter, new catchphrases came into being like white lives matter, blue lives matter, or all lives matter. You probably remember seeing all those bumper stickers. They came out almost immediately. But the point that is brought out in the book is that dominant culture could have allowed a space for silence to hear the lament of a minority culture. Do we have the spiritual strength in dominant culture to listen to silence? Do we have the strength in our spiritual life to listen to lament, rather than just immediately jumping into the uncomfortable silences and fill it up with airspace? It made me wonder about Psalms, if we're still willing to read the Psalms and listen and allow lament to wash over us. Or to think about the book of Lamentations and allow the book of Lamentations to give us pause for silence. So when we think about adaptive leadership, those are the kinds of things to be thinking about. You ought to take a look at Talking to Strangers. It lifts up not only that experience, but many other experiences from really famous news stories of how it is that culture has talked past each other rather than taking the time to listen and to experience each other.